Hello, everybody. It's a good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Frankenstein chat. This is the 218th edition of the chat, and I'm delighted to say we have a guest with us today, and that's Paul Ainsworth. Hello, Paul.
Morning, Frank. Morning, Stan. Morning,
Morning,
everybody.
Paul.
Yeah, this
Nice
is
to see you again.
Paul's second time with us, so obviously we weren't put off by the first appearance. We didn't fall out, but it's great to have you back. Before we get, we'll just sort of let Paul do a little introduction in a minute, but we always go to Stan to see how he is today. Stan, how are you this morning?
I'm okay. The cough that I said last week had definitely gone, has come back to haunt me again. So, well, if I'll use the mute button like I did the other week to try and stop affecting. But apart from that, I'm okay.
And can I just say, I know everybody who follows the chat will be wanting to know Salford Reds. What is the position today?
It's still. All we know is the players have now been paid.
Oh yeah, 'cause they weren't paid a couple of days ago, were they?
No, they were. It's over a week late, and they'd refused to train unless they were paid. So they've been paid. I think. The, it's a big mess up. What it is, according to what we're told, is there's big money being moved across from Australia to the UK in order to fund the buying of the club and buying of the stadium, maybe. And that money has to go through lots and lots of checks to make sure it's not money laundering or criminal money,
Yes, yes,
etc.
yes.
And it's just taken a lot longer than they expected.
Right.
So there's no money here to pay for anything.
God. So we all had a whip round for the wages, did we?
Well, there was a rumor last night that whoever paid, it wasn't the owners that had paid the wages; it was
Uh,
somebody else.
well, I mean, this isn't about football or rugby league, but that happened in Southend United's case as well, where they ran out of money, and the only way that they could end up paying players was with donations from supporters. But yeah, it's funny when you're at these lowest, and this is about education, isn't it? Sometimes when you're at your lowest ebb, you do have to sort of start getting right back to why we're here, what are we
Yeah,
about. And at the end of the day, Salford Rugby League must have been, I think it was Swinton, wasn't it? It must have been just a local group of men
yeah,
who got together probably 100 years or so ago,
125 years. Yeah,
and decided they want to play rugby league together. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, if everything else falls apart, that's what is still going to remain. There will still
yeah.
be a side that'll do that. It might not be playing in the on Sky
I'll be
TV.
playing professional. But
But anyway, Paul, thanks for coming back. And do you want to just give a little introduction as to who you are and what you're about and how we know each other?
Yeah, thanks so much, Frank. I think last time I was on, it was the day that Stan had just come back from his cruise in the
ah,
summer. I think that's where kind of slightly different weather today. So I'm an education director for Infinity Academies Trust, a primary only mat in Lincolnshire. So I'm sat here just to the south of the city, and the Red Arrows are practicing.
Oh
So if you
wow!
hear any noise in the background, they're being very busy bees up
I
there
think
at the
it's great
moment.
that they put the show on to coincide with our chat. I
It's
just think
it's
it's
yeah.
brilliant. If I
amazing.
go and stand outside my front of my house, I can see the kind of V going on
And
probably at the moment.
wow.
So
I
um
can't quite compete with that, but we've got some Salford City Councilmen redoing the tarmac outside the road, so it may be a similar noise, but it's probably not the same display.
I'm so pleased you've arranged for that to happen during this recording of this show, Stan. Yeah, Paul. So what else do you do?
what I'm probably best known for is my two recent books, which are the No Silver Bullets books. So the first one, Day In, Day Out School Improvement, and the Heart and Soul of School Improvement. I got obsessed with this idea that we were always looking for magic answers. And certainly, if we go back to the kind of multi academy trusts of 8 or 9 years ago, it was very much find something that works in one school and then put it in every other school in the
Yeah.
trust. And I just thought there's got to be a different way. I'm really interested in marginal gains and David Brailsford and Clive Woodward and all that type of thing. And my view on school improvement is it's the marginal gains. It's the little things make the big difference. So the first book, I just collected together all the little ideas that I'd
How
seen
long did
over.
it take you to do that? Because we've been asked to write a book, haven't we, Stan? I'm so worried about it. I'm going to be hunkered down in this little study for months trying to write something. I mean, did it all flow? Did it just you just dumped it into the computer and it was all there? Or
So my
what?
top tip is always structure. That's my top tip. But if you find a
That's
structure,
our weakness, Stan. That's
Yeah.
find
where.
a find a structure for your chapters and then write to those chapters.
Right.
I think it was Richard Osman said he writes 800 words a day. That's what he does when he's writing his novels, 800 words a day. And I think that to me works. Write a small amount every day and it builds up. The first book, because it was just a collection of little ideas, I think 90 odd to start off with, each idea being a page of writing, I'd just try and write an idea every day. And it had been in my brain for about 5 years, that one. And each year I'd add a few more ideas in this little notebook that I was carrying around with me. And then I had a 6 month period where I thought, no, I'm just going to put it all down. And then the second book arose from the idea of if you've got all these little ideas, how do you put them into action?
Right.
What's the way that you can do that? And I wanted it to be sustainable. And I was really aware of the emotions of school improvement. I think we sometimes we just talk about process, but it comes from the heart, doesn't it? That's what it's about. So I was trying to think of, well, it's not evaluation, it's evaluation without honesty. It's not just planning, it's not taking the plan you've done in one school and transplanting it to another one. It's plan with empathy to where you're working. How do we want people to work? We want them to be confident. So execute with confidence. And then when you've done all that, it's the review with humility. We get things wrong, so we don't always get it right. So that's the concept of the second book. And I've had loads of really great feedback from just a whole range of from CEOs to classroom teachers, just thanking me for kind of saying, just take your time, you'll get there in the end. Little things make a big difference.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think also, in terms of getting the culture right, all of those actions around how you implement is really important, isn't it? To feel as though you're in a place where staff feel able to open up about things that didn't quite work well, but also to be able to celebrate the fact that things did work well. And you don't want to just keep those for yourself. They're not. I know you said there are no silver bullets, but at that moment in time, you think you've cracked something. You've got something, and there are some members of staff who think, well, no, that's mine now.
Yeah.
I've got that. And I've worked hard to develop that. Whereas I think culturally, it's all around the relationships and your ability to open up and your willingness to sort of lay your soul out, whether or not it's good or bad. I think that's really important.
The
Yeah.
psychology stuff that I've done with Mindflick, once you start to identify people's sort of hardwired processes, and you start to realize that the people you thought couldn't be bothered actually are fine. They just don't get either excited or worried about the thing you're doing. They just plow on. Others can see all the things that might go wrong and will share those with you. And if you're not careful, you just view them as completely negative. But actually, they're a real rich resource of, wow, I hadn't thought that might go wrong. But, they'll tell you that. And then there are the super optimists who, everything's fantastic and nothing can go
Yeah,
wrong. And then there's those people who have a balance that sort of say, well, I can see the wins, but I can also see some of the downsides of that, and we need to compensate one for the other. And once you start to understand that your team's made up of people like that with completely different
mm,
viewpoints, the one I always use when I'm using it is Alex Ferguson and Mourinho. Alex Ferguson played to win, Mourinho played not to lose, which are a different mindsets altogether, but may have the same result. But it's
Yeah.
about how you look at things. Once you know your team like that, and you can use the strengths of people who say, "Oh, I can see all problems with this." Well, let's talk about those problems. Let's eliminate them before we launch into something that's not going to work.
mm,
So I think that psychology bit of understanding where school improvement works is vital. You can't just, like as you said, Paul, before, you can't just take something from somewhere else and go, yeah, oh, this has worked, And we've seen that. Those of us who are 95 now have seen it several times, haven't we? We've seen initiatives that are really successful in some school, and then you get this watered down, not quite right, nobody committed to it model of it in another school, and it fails, and everyone says, "Oh, it didn't work in the first place." It's about the context.
Go on, Paul.
I think the other story I love about Alex, I mean, so many great stories about Sir Alex, aren't there? There's just a wealth of them. One of the things that I've often thought about is the comment that he used to say to his players before they went on the pitch about enjoy themselves. You
Yeah,
know, we want to win, but you're playing at Old Trafford. You got
yeah.
60,000 people watching you. They would all want to be on the pitch doing what you do. So enjoy yourself, and that's one of the things that I know. We all, it's a tough job, it's a busy job, and all those kind of things. But I don't think we spend enough time thinking about the enjoyment, all the little comments from the children that are just gold dust, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those kind of silly things, or those things that happen, or when it goes wrong in your classroom and you've just got to laugh. I don't think we
No, I
relish
bet
that,
every
maybe.
teacher's thought we should write all these down and make a book of them, because I know I've done that from my very first start, and I've never written one down.
Yeah, but some
But
members of staff are very good at remembering these things. I mean, one of my daughters is a primary school teacher. She can remember all these stories going back years. I don't know, they're just lodged. Whereas for me, like you, some funny things happen. But if I was to actually write them down, I'd struggle to find three or four. But yeah, I mean, I was interested in what you were saying before about this sort of level of honesty and having a team that's made up of different characters, and it is this sense that times I suppose I'm conscious of being older, and I was talking to colleagues yesterday who are a charity that's involved in trying to develop more creativity in school, and I said, well, the one thing that I can offer you is 40 years. That's all I've got. 40 years of seeing a lot, and actually, I think as I've got older, it's the only thing that I have that others don't have. And so when I look at talking to a friend recently, they were concerned about they're working in a multi academy trust where everybody was on it. The senior, people like yourself, Paul. They're sort of ambitious. They tend to be a lot younger than some of the others that they're actually leading. And actually, this person was saying that actually it's quite threatening that because my situation is I've just had a child, I've got another child, my husband's working, there's only so much I can do, but there is a sense at times that unless you understand this aspect of a person's life, you can really sort of undermine their feelings of worth, and their ability to want to contribute because actually they feel as though it's never going to be enough because I can't actually commit as much time as you can. So I think understanding all of these, the characters, the families, the people, and having seen it, is probably quite important, I think.
It's a really interesting conversation, isn't it, around your kind of skills of leadership with your own children and kind of how that changes. When I became a head, my children were really little. Where my son's 22 today, actually. It's
Oh,
kind of, time
what's he
marches
called? What's
on.
his name?
He's Jacob and he's in Manchester. He's
How is
yeah,
he?
so he'll still be asleep at the moment, Frank, because he lives the Robert Smith lifestyle of getting up sometime in the afternoon and partying until 4 o'clock in the
Is it, is
morning.
it, isn't he, is it related to music? Isn't it? Does he doing some work in music? Or
Yeah, he's a student. He's kind of doing his script writing masters, but his band's playing tonight at the Yes Basement in Manchester.
oh wow,
Apparently, they're Andy Burnham's favourite band, or they were in December. So
right.
the roll-ups are out. To be honest, I wish I was in Manchester seeing them tonight. That would be amazing. But it is that as you kind of your children grow up and you go through things with your own children, or things happen in your own life. Maybe your parents die, or you're ill, or those kind of things, and that changes you as a leader. I've had the real luxury of last 10 years. I've worked with so many schools and some have been in really difficult places. I think I've seen probably about everything that can go wrong. I've
Mm,
probably seen that. And you realize, don't you, things go wrong, but we can always fix them. And that's something that myself and the colleague I work with, Kate, we always say a lot to people. Just tell us, we'll help you fix it. And I think when you're younger, you don't want to admit to that, do you?
no.
You've done something, you're not prepared to say it's not working well. I'm sure I was the same when I was in my 30s, but now it's kind of, oh, come on, how do we make it better together? And we spend it, in kind of Infinity, myself, Kate, and Gavin, we spend a lot of time just talking about, well, what should we do next, and what do we think, and we try not to rush to do things. Sometimes we have to, but we try and take a really measured response, and it's all around how can we work with people to fix it, make it a little bit better.
So
I used to have to talk to new heads when I was in Lancashire, and I used to say to them, I can tell you now, the biggest secret of headship, the secret that nobody ever passes on to anybody else. And they all sit there and you say, it's hard, it's lonely, you get hurt, and you struggle, but you don't tell anybody else. Just
that is,
put your hand up.
I think I've benefited when I look back at my career and think who has helped me the most. It's probably been my wife, because she's not in education. She wasn't in education. She was an educator. She's a great mother and all this sort of stuff. And she's out today doing for about the 5th year running. She's done it for 5 years, just a little toddler group at a local church. But I found having her to talk to was a massive release for me. And I think I found also that she was very, not knowing the individuals, she was much clearer in terms of what she thought I ought to do. Now, sometimes knowing the individuals affects, oh, I can't do that. But actually, it's quite useful to cut through all the rubbish and say, well, actually, just concentrate on this. I found that very, very helpful. So, yeah.
Not that easy if you're both educated.
No, I know. Well,
I can remember Jill asking me something, and then I'm saying, do you want an advisor answer or a husband answer? Because they are different.
Which one did you offer, Stan?
I offered the husband, which is you doing exactly the right thing.
Paul, is there another book hovering somewhere, or do you think that now, does it, when you've done one, you've done a second, but when you're writing the second, does a third come in the thought process, the writing process?
I am an ideas person. That's kind of, I find that, I often say ideas are easy. It's putting them into practice that's the hard bit. I've got a notebook full of kind of book titles and plans for books and that kind of thing. There's 2 in my mind that I'm thinking about. One of them I'd like to do by having conversations with a range of like practitioners, and I've got a structure in my head, and there's something I want to work towards, but I want to get views of collections of individuals, kind of classroom teachers, heads department, head teachers, and I just want some views to that.
Dan,
this is the man who can write our book.
He can write our book.
I can be the ghostwriter.
What's happening here, Stan? He's taken our idea of the Frankenstein chat, talking to a range of people, and he's going to write it as a book.
Yeah.
So could he? Yeah, a ghostwriter would be brilliant, wouldn't it, Stan? That would.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like
it doesn't even need to be a ghostwriter. You can write it. You can take all the credit.
As long as we can edit it, Stan.
Yeah. As long as our name's somewhere on the jacket, I'm not fine.
No, I think I think one of the things that I've enjoyed about Frankenstein Chat, and I want to support what you're saying, is we always try and get a range of people. Whether that's a teacher or a governor, whether it's a professor, whatever it may be. I think it's just that range of views, and I think sometimes, and this, no disrespect to you, Paul, because you're very senior in your trust and very senior in the education world, but sometimes it's sad when we get somebody on who perhaps isn't as prominent, but actually have a really interesting take on something, and actually it's really sad when we can't get that voice heard. So I think I always feel that about some of our chats where the viewing figures are lower purely because nobody knows who this person is. There's a lot of trust in the fact that, you get a big name, then everybody, this is going to be really interesting. But actually, from our point of view, the voices of those further down the education food chain are just as interesting. But anyway.
Some of our best ones, Frank, of ones we've enjoyed, let's say, let's not call them the best ones. The ones we've enjoyed have been ones that other people just didn't take on board.
No. And I think that's why I think doing the book, which we've been asked to do and we're trying to put off, does allow us to highlight those less well-known voices within the book, because we've had, some very eminent academics, we've had former chief inspectors, but actually they've all brought something. But Stan was saying, I can think of a student that we've interviewed here a couple of times who is a sort of like a political activist. She was a political activist at school. She was encouraged to be a political leader at school. And actually, she's taken that on. And so in a way that, not a big name, but actually got quite an interesting take on, on what schooling ought to be and what leadership for young people should be like, So
I'd like to do something on kind of the energy of school improvement. How do you find the energy to do it? Whether you're a classroom teacher, whether that's because I've got my views on school improvement, but it's how do you find that ability to keep going? That's what I'm interested in looking at next.
And is there a point where you can say, right, we're done for now? So we actually, our school improvement plan now is going to be, we'll just embed everything for the next 12 to 18 months, and then we'll look again. Because I see this sort of some people pushing this continuous improvement, which almost says you can't stop. You can, and I just think sometimes schools have got to just say,
well, they're up and down though, aren't they? Schools are up
here.
and down.
Yeah, we're here now. We've done what we needed. We said 12 months ago we needed to do. Let's just have a 12-month run of seeing how it pans out. And
Paul's being very careful now, because actually, as one of the senior school improvement directors of the trust, he's saying, well, we don't really want to do that across the board, because actually there'd be no need for me anymore, would there? But
maybe there's that thing of the continual reading, though. I think there's a bit of truth there, Stan, in terms of there might be times where you don't do major things, and that's what I'm talking a lot about. Just keep, finding the little 1%. But I think you need to keep doing the reading to find out what else is up there and keep up to date. And my fear is that, go back to Sir Alex Ferguson, that last year he had at Man United, he created a team for that 1 year to win the Premiership. They knew they would run out of steam at the end of the year. And then David Moyes got stuck with that aging team that wouldn't have won under Fergie the following year. And he knew that. So that's the worry in school improvement, isn't it? You take it so far, and you then, you kind of decline, and it's too late to do anything about it.
Interestingly, because people talk about, it's quite an interesting point, that, Paul, that people talk about that year being Ferguson's greatest success, in that he managed to achieve the Premiership title by by quite some way. But actually, that's wrong, isn't it? If actually you're leaving your successor with something that isn't ready to roll, that really is. And also
the other thing I'm not sure about in that scenario, because I know it's been played and plat, where he talks about an aging team. Actually, half the team were below 25.
Yeah. And some of them came out of retirement later on, didn't they?
It's just it fits a story. Like, there were one or two big name players like Van Persie who went, and that's what everyone's were. But there were some youngsters in that team as well.
There's a set of biographies on BBC Sounds at the moment. It's an 8-part series that looks at Ferguson, and that's really interesting. That kind of view of the last season. Yeah, I kind of loved listening to that when I was driving around a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well, let's talking about that, because I think the conversation is going to be linking into what's caught my eye this week. So, Stan, I think you're going to talk about complaints today.
Yeah, it's one of those weird coincidences that I was sending some stuff to be shredded, and I found a folder that's obviously been left on the shelf for a long time, and it was a complaints when I was looking for the local authority. It's a series of complaints that have come as high as local authority action. What's interesting is I won't mention the names, but two of them are from current MPs. One of which is very high in the cabinet office. The complaint's gone through them. It's not their complaint, but that one's marked urgent because a local MP has raised it.
That was true in my day in Ofsted as well. So there was a hierarchy in terms of speed of response, depending on their position within the government or in the opposition.
But the school, sorry, the schools week this week was sort of saying that head teachers are now under amazing pressure from parental complaints, often vexatious complaints, and it's always been an issue of mine, not the complaint process, but the fact that there's no end to the complaint process. There's nothing that says, right, you've now you've exhausted all the opportunities you've got, and the school has answered it in the best of their abilities. That's it.
Yeah.
Because then it's you can go to the DFE, you can go to Ofsted, you can appeal to the DFE from there, go back to the local authority, and all the time. Often these things are about tiny. And one of the things that came, and I can't mention any names, it's not fair, but there's a complaint here about the noise that children are making in a school by a local resident who works from home, and it's ruining their concentration. And it starts on the 7th of December, letter to the email to the head teacher. 16th of December, another email to say he hasn't had a reply to the first email. The 23rd, I think, of December, asking where his will they acknowledge that he's actually made a complaint. The 8th of January, a letter personally handed into school. The 19th, another of January, another letter into school to the chair of governors. The 10th of February, the school actually responds. The 28th of February, after a full governors meeting have discussed it, it's the chair of governors answers, and the 12th of March it came to the local authority, and that's how we got. And it was something that wasn't fixable.
Yeah, because
Children
you
make
bought
a
a house
noise.
next to a
Yeah.
primary school.
You buy a house next to a school, and you've actually bought your house next to the early years who spend a lot of time outside the classroom, and they will be noisy. It's not something that's fixable. But you just think how much time and effort by everybody went into a complaint that really should have been, somebody should have said from the start, there's nowhere to go with this complaint because
The,
it's not.
the, the other thing about that I've noticed, Stan, in the world of complaints is the level of personal nature of them
Yeah,
increasingly.
Yes.
You know, it's there's a lot of complaints from parents about head teachers that are just too personal, and I I sit there and say, sorry, that's vexatious. I just want to bin that. I'm just, and my immediate response is I want to protect the head teacher, whether it's somebody in my trust or whether it's a colleague that I coach from outside or a friend or any of those things. And there almost isn't a way for people in the centre to kind of just say, no, I'm not having that. I know this head teacher's doing a good job. They would never do that. And it always reminds me of probably one of the complaints that worried me the most was a phone call that I did I think it was on my 40th birthday. And the parent complained, said that I'd sworn at her over the phone. It's just, we didn't have recording materials. We didn't have that kind of thing. I had my door open to the office. If I'd sworn, my staff would have heard me. That rattled on for about 6 months, and it was just balmy, just really balmy, and
yeah.
that just increases now.
I had a parent similar to that saying that I'd said to him that I didn't believe him when he came with a case. He said his child was being bullied, and he said, "You told me." This was to the chair of governors. He told me he didn't believe me, and what I'd actually said is, "I would hate to believe that goes on in our school." That was the phrase I'd used, and he picked up on believe and decided that I was calling him a liar. There's one here that's. I'll just say. We are writing to you as a group of angry parents. We are sick and tired of our children having lots of new teachers. And it shows us parents that the staff are not happy with Mrs. Blank, the head teacher. She is far too bossy, and if you don't do it her way, she gets rid of you. How can you take a letter like that seriously?
I think social media is also,
Yeah. And this entitlement, Frank.
Yeah,
I've got my rights.
I know.
It's amplified on social media.
I'm shocked at. I mean, I'm not happy with some elements of government, but I try and not make it personal, and I think that there is this thing here that I don't think there's a strong enough understanding about what you can and what you can't say. I think the fact that I think people say a lot of stuff which actually, if people were to go after them in terms of wanting to take a solicitor's letter or to sort of threaten them to go to court, I think people generally don't want to do that, so they just let it go. But actually, I think there's a lot of stuff I read online where I think, I've either complained to the X or to Blue Sky, whatever, about what I've read, but actually that nothing's ever done about it. And I think that encourages people to think, well, I can get away with it.
Mm.
But actually, I think for me, the social media thing is around everybody should prove who they are online. So this idea that you can create a presence that's not you, and you can use that vehicle primarily to sort of just shoot people down, and actually sort of denigrate people. I think that's wrong. I think everybody, everybody should know I'm saying this now. It's me. You know where I am. I think that's the way it should be online as well. What about Paul? Now,
So I'm
this is links in quite nicely to
it does link in.
yours.
I've tried really hard over the last week to kind of find something. I listen to loads of podcasts. I listen to Radio 4 incessantly. I read all the stuff on the kind of internet and talk to loads of people. And I just feel as though I can't take my eyes away from the car crash that's happening internationally at the moment. And I didn't want to kind of talk about, kind of say about Trump and Zelensky and Putin but that is just what's there all the time. And I suppose it comes back to that idea of, as school leaders, probably a lot of us came into the job because we wanted children to be safe. And maybe we kind of grew up in schools where bullying did happen, didn't it? Kind of the schools you were initially teachers of, that I was a pupil
Yes.
of in the 70s and 80s, were not great times, were they? Kind of, it was tough. And I suppose we watch what's going on in the news, and it just feels like 2-year 11s on a tennis court with a year 7 boy. The year 7 boy can't get out, and they're all going, "I want your dinner money. No, I want your dinner money. I want your dinner." And that's what feels is happening at the moment. And yeah, it's how do you protect yourself from that as well, isn't it? Because it's just so depressing and so upsetting and makes you angry and all of those kind of things.
And for me, it's also the backtracking to some extent, but the backtracking that then denies. I'm thinking of the Deputy Vance who said something stupid about Britain and France, basically, but then said, no, 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 I didn't mention those two at all. It wasn't about. But then people have said, well, which countries did you mean? And he's unable to answer that because he just said something off the top of his head, and instead of saying, yeah, actually, I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong, and it's demonstrably not true. They back it up with more nonsense.
Yes.
That's what wears me out.
Yeah.
And people swallow it.
There is a film called The Inside Job, which was all about the 2008 financial crisis. It is, for me, one of the best films I've ever seen. And basically, it's a documentary. And at the end of the day, there's an economist on there saying, a British economist saying, we've got to a point where we don't really know who to believe or what to believe anymore. And what that related to was economists who were being paid by banks to create theories and papers that actually said that you could leverage over and over and over and over again, as if you can just increase the debt and it would never topple. That's basically what the economists were saying in their papers. They're completely wrong. It's not, that was proved wrong, wasn't it, by the financial crash. But what was saying there was this corruption within the system, which enables these voices to be heard, and for those papers to be peer reviewed by other economists who are also being paid by banks. And we've got the same sort of situation occurring here with America, haven't we? And there is no one really standing up to say that that's a lie, that's untruthful, and everyone is just. It feels as though is it the majority? But a lot of people in the States are just thinking, just let it roll, just see where it ends up. You know, I mean, they were dissatisfied with what they had before. This might be better. Let's have a roll of the dice. Who knows where it'll lead? It feels to me like Brexit all over again, to be honest. You know,
Yeah, but with bigger world consequences,
yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
than
yeah,
Brexit.
yeah. For me, what's caught my eye this week, I was thinking about I was speaking to I went to visit an academy last week, and I was speaking to a student, and they were sort of disappointed with their exam result, their test result. And one thing I didn't ask was, well, what did you get in your previous result? You know, it might be she was disappointed, but she could have said, well, actually, it's 10% better than I got before. And it reminded me very much of a video which I play as part of a leadership program with Frank Dick, who was in charge of the British athletics team. And Frank Dick is sort of like, he does keynote speeches and whatever, but this little video takes about 2 minutes 41 seconds, and for me it sort of sums up what we're trying to do in terms of school improvement, in terms of young people trying to achieve as well as they can. But they're trying to do that in some schools where actually the expectation is that you will achieve the very highest grades, and that is simply impossible. And Frank Dick in this little video explains, how we ought to value effort and hard work as much as we do, academic or personal performance. So I'm just going to play it now.
100 years ago, I was a Scottish national coach, and I used to go around the tracks of Scotland working with coaches. And every now and again, a little girl from this town or that town would turn up, and you hear a little voice. And I'd be working away and hear the voice going, "Mr. Dick!" Well, with a name like mine, you don't turn around too fast because you don't know what's going to be said next, So, Mr. Dick, Mr. Dick! Yes? Will you coach me? Well, yeah, but not at the moment because I'm working with these people. Will you coach me later? Yes, fine. When? Look, when I'm finished with them, I'll come and work with you. When's that? Look, sit down in the stand. When I'm finished with them, I promise I'll come and work with you. Promise? Yeah, see ya. Fine. Now, after I finish working with you, I'll work with her. She's 9 years of age and she wants to go to run 100 meters. And I work with her for a few weeks. She goes to her first race. She lines up with another 7 kids. On your march. Set. Bang. Runs down the track. Hurls herself at the line. 8th out of 8. In 18 seconds. Comes back. Oh, Mr. Dick, I was last. No, you weren't last. Yes, I was. No. You were 18 seconds. What do you mean? Well, you've smashed the 20-second barrier. And I had you down for 19 seconds. You're a whole second faster than that. Do you know what this means? No. This means it's your lifetime best performance. Your own personal world record. Really? Yes. And in some ways you're a first. What do you mean? You're the first athlete I've ever coached who's run 18 seconds for the 100 meters. Now listen, in a few weeks' time, she's got another race. What does she think winning is now? If she does 17.9, she'll grab a flag and she'll run around the track. Because that's what winning is. Winning is being better today than you were yesterday. Every day. And if she keeps on working at that, in a few weeks' time, she's fighting with other kids to get to the line. And you might think to yourself, well, surely winning now, Frank, is beating them. Not if it's in 19 seconds, it's not. Or we've killed our definition. The reason you go into tough arenas in life is to be challenged to perform better. You cannot perform better if you're not challenged. Listen, you don't learn to climb mountains in life by going round them or asking somebody for a ladder. You learn to climb mountains by climbing mountains, by seeking out the really toughest challenges, because that makes you perform better. When you keep on going at that, one day you'll be a one and only. But the truth is, she always was, is, and will be.
So, yeah, I mean, I just love that video, to be honest. For me, it sort of made me think about how we assess young people and thinking about, forget where they are in class, think about what their previous performance was and focus in on, what has improved. And, in far too many cases, this is about progress, isn't it? This is emphasizing the importance of personal progress. But if we were to do that, then actually I think we'd find ourselves with, I feel, much happier young people who are more reflective about themselves not comparing themselves all the time with somebody else who is not them, and thinking about what they want to get, what their winning line is going to be. So, and I can strongly recommend that little video. Have either of you seen it before? Have you seen it before?
Not seen that one. I've seen a similar one, Frank, with Steve Bradbury, the Australian speed skater.
Oh yeah.
Australia aren't well known for their speed skaters, and he just carried on working when everyone told him he was stupid, because they don't do speed skating as such as big Australian. He couldn't get time on the ice unless it was like in the early hours of the morning and things like that to practice. And he worked and worked and worked to improve himself. And by chance, in I think it was 2002 Olympic Games, he got through the to the semi-final on a default, and in the semi-final, two players got disqualified, and he found himself in the final with world champions that were way beyond what he could expect. And in speed skating, there's a kind of agreement that once you get half a lap, maybe a bit more behind, you drop out of the race, because you actually, at that point, you can't possibly get into the winning situation. And he was in that situation, but he just stayed on the ice and just did what he did best. And what happened, of course, on the last lap, these three competing world champions managed to crash themselves out off the ice altogether. And Steve Bradbury sailed through the end with his hands like this, not knowing what was going on, but he actually won the gold medal. And they interviewed him afterwards, and they said, lots of people said you should hand that back. You haven't really won it. The others have won it for you. And he said, well, no, I'm going to take that medal, but I'm going to take it not for that race, but for the years and years of me practicing, for things that went wrong. I think at one point he nearly died because he got an ice skate cut on his neck. But there's a picture of him with on those frames on, but he never gave up, and he's got this gold medal. And what's funny now is that he did an advert for Ron Seal with it says what it says on the tin. It said it's the finish that counts.
But that's all a point you made before, Paul, about incremental gains, isn't it? Point of that with him, the point of that with Frank Dick was all around small little improvements building up time over time over time.
And improving yourself rather than worrying about what everybody else is doing.
And sometimes it's hard. I mean, it's funny how you must get this so often, Paul. You can see the improvement in the institution, but because they're part of it, the leaders are part of it, they can't see it. So we're observing it like the running race. You can see it evolving, but because they're part of it, they can't see everybody else's actions and how it all sort of links up. So I think it's really interesting I think it's really important that we offer that view. We value attainment over progress, don't we?
Yeah, that's the issue. That we don't say, this child has done amazingly well to get here. They've still not got their pass, but they've done amazing to get to this point. Oh, but this child's passed, so that must be better.
Yes,
that child must somehow be superior.
And again, as we were saying, as you get older, you realise actually that's it's hard to say this in schools, isn't it? This isn't going to shape your life. You will shape your life. You know what I mean? This is just for now. Anyway, nice chat, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's good that
40 odd minutes, just like that. Paul, would love to have you back. It's a real pleasure for us to, for you to give your time for us, to these two old blokes here, spending time with somebody who's actually doing a proper job and making a difference.
Yeah.
So thank you, Paul. And thank you, everybody, for watching and for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. But until then, it's goodbye. Cheerio, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.